Happy Friday! It's that time. At the end of the week. It's been a long week. It's been a long couple weeks. Just getting started with this, like every Monday through Friday, going live every night has been. It's like a step up, and I'm trying to juggle full-time work and a business and everything like that, and family on top of this. And so it's Friday. I'm taking a couple of days after this. We do have some stuff happening over the weekend, but I'm going to dedicate a lot of time to being home and helping out and being around the kids and my wife and everything like that, because it's been a lot over the last couple of weeks. But we made it. It's Friday. This is Why Libertarian. I am Matt. Thank you for checking in with me on your Friday evening. Really quickly before I get rolling, as usual, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and retweet, get this out there. So, this isn't going to be a long episode. It's not going to be a rant. It's not going to be something like overly political or anything like that, but it's really going to be focused on something that I think keeps coming up time and time again. And we saw it really, first of all, toplobster.com. If you like the headgear here, toplobster.com, head on over there and check it out. Obviously, we're coming into warmer months, so you're not necessarily going to need this piece, but there's a bunch of stuff over there. Awesome t-shirts. So anyway, there's been a lot of stuff that has come up as of recently that just has made me think of some of the things that we're facing as a liberty movement. All right. And the one thing I wanted to talk about tonight was just being open and vocal. And open and vocal doesn't mean screaming at the top of your lungs. Believe me, there's a bunch of Shane Hazels and Josh Smiths and Clint from Liberty Liberty Lockdown and whatever. There's Dave Smiths and there's all these people out there. There's Eric DeJuly. There's all these people out there that will yell from the top of the hills, right? Like, they will get attention, and it is their sole intent to get attention. That's fine. Like, they will get the message out there. But actually, even more effectively, like, I think through the thing that happened with Libertarian Party of Kentucky and the one tweet and Dave Smith coming out and kind of railing against the vaccine passport, as he should, as we all should. He gained a ton of followers. A bunch of other people gained a ton of followers. There was a huge amount of reach, and libertarian was trending and things like that. And there was also a ton of people that were saying shh, or don't say that, or that's mean, or that's hateful, or right. But one thing kept coming back to me, and it was this idea that if anyone's ever read the story of or even watched the movie of Harvey Milk, and how the gay community, mainly the male gay community in San Francisco, fought for equality, or at least it wasn't even equality, because they didn't even gain that at the moment. I mean, it took a long period of time for them to gain equal footing, but it was just a matter of trying to escape from just punishment and being thought of as an underclass and as second-class citizens, or as lower than everyone else. One of the things that he said was you have to let everyone know. He was big on people in the gay community coming out of the closet. He was you have to let people know who you are. And you don't necessarily have to throw it in their face. You don't have to be all confrontational about it. Obviously, if they call you something and treat you substandard because you say what you are, it's on. But, the key is you have to let people know that you're there, and that someone feels that way, and that there is a different way to think, right? I think that's something that a lot of us are beginning to discover. There's the wake up moment for each one of us, and the question is, well, how does that come about? A lot of us, the wake up moment came from a Ron Paul, or it came from, maybe a book that we read, or it came from a natural progression. But for each one of us, there was a wake-up point where, we had to come to terms with the way that we felt. But there had to be someone else out there that was talking about these things. in order for us to have that moment for ourselves, right? Like it didn't just materialize out of nowhere, out of the ether. It came about because there was someone like a Ron Paul who was brave and stood up and said these things. And so the one thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, I think a lot of people out there are liberty minded and they're afraid to say it. You know, I think it was a BS thing for like Gary Johnson, and I think even Joe Jorgensen said this. Like, you know, I think everyone's libertarian, they just don't know it yet. I think a lot of people are liberty minded. Who cares about the libertarian part? I think a lot of people are liberty minded. And I don't think that they don't know it. I think they're afraid to say it and live it. And that's a big deal because that's a huge like hurdle to get over. For many folks it's a self-imposed mental barrier to living a life of liberty and freedom. But what I do know is that there's a lot of people out there that find it easier if there's someone to help them through it. Not necessarily be their guide, but just know that there's someone else out there. Like, Liberty Twitter is a fantastic place. It's also an ugly place, but it's also a fantastic place because let me tell you about New Jersey. I can't stress this enough to people. Like, the state of how deeply centralized and authoritarian New Jersey is. I won't even use the social word, right? Like, it's just authoritarian. It is corrupt. It is top down. It is centralized power in far too few hands. And as someone who is part of the liberty movement now, I think of the way I viewed things like even 12 months ago, and it just felt like there was no one, right? Like there were people on the Republican side or the conservative side that were, said that they were fighting the fight and things like that. But even them, I didn't really see eye to eye with because the principles didn't exactly line up, right? They line up in a couple of places, but they didn't really line up in most places. And that common thread of liberty was there in a couple of the issues and just not all the rest of them. And I'm always one who's looking for consistency, but more importantly, I was looking for like running mates, right? Like I wanted a pack. Like I didn't want to be there just by myself out in isolation. I do that enough as an entrepreneur. I mean, like being an entrepreneur is extremely lonely. I don't think people understand that either. As someone who is the person who has their name on the masthead or whatever, it's not like people aren't your friends. Like even your employees or people that work alongside with you or partner with you, they're not your friends. I mean, they might be friends outside of business, but the majority of the time you're interacting with them in a way that's not, friendship and buddy and stuff. And there's a lot of kind of like artificial, friendship that gets passed back and forth. But, the one thing that I felt like I was missing for a long time was a tribe, right? Like I was missing, and I don't want to be, I don't want to say that we need to be more tribal, but what I'm saying is I need to feel that there's actually someone out there who feels the same way I do. The liberty creators, like the liberty media people that are out there, a lot of the folks that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, they help, right? Like they're voicing what needs to be voiced. But what's really powerful and what's going to be way more powerful than anything that they can do, right? They light the spark. The way the fire gets going is when we start building community. Like that's really important. There needs to be community built around these principles, right? Not everyone's a loner. Not everyone can just kind of live in isolation. Even in a lot of agorist circles, they work with each other. They pool resources and barter and help each other, right? The liberty community needs to be built. And it's not built just by, people screaming from the mountaintops. It's built from people living a life of liberty and freedom. And so it's really important that, and I know it's scary because a lot of you might be surrounded with folks that just have completely different viewpoints. So much so they're propagandized and indoctrinated so much that they are screaming. They're the ones that are screaming. And they want you to shut up whenever you say anything that's even like like a little bit different than what the narrative is that they want everyone to parrot, right? You might be surrounded by those people, but it's really important to let folks know how you see differently. Okay? You don't have to argue with them. You don't have to pick a fight. But you have to raise the issue because look, some people you're not going to actually most people you're not going to like, convert or you're not going to change their mind, okay? But a lot of people out there are quiet. Trump spoke to a lot of people that were quiet, and that is a major reason why he was popular. It's and continues to be. Is because he spoke to people that felt like no one was speaking their language. I think those people speak the language of liberty. I think they just kind of got diverted because a demagogue came around. But it's really important to say it because I can tell you from my own personal beats here in New Jersey, the last 12 months it's been eye-opening because, I would say that my awakening happened years ago, but I never really felt like I wanted to get involved in this movement until I met the crew of people that I have around me now. And it's a crew of people that like we just knew that we got along from the very beginning because we see things through not the same way, but through a similar filter, right? And it's that filter of liberty. And so we might have things that we disagree on, and we might have things that we go back and forth on, but for the most part, we're extremely cohesive in the sense that like we want liberty, like true liberty amongst ourselves and our own personal lives, and as much of it as possible for the people that want to take advantage of it, that want to actually live it out. But that wouldn't have been possible if all of us stayed quiet, right? Like that wouldn't have been possible if all of us didn't kind of like, venture out and be like, taxation is theft, right? If we didn't venture out and just be like, all laws are infringements. We needed to be able to voice those things. It's like in the wild when you have a bunch of animals and they're all they seem like they're kind of like, just sending noise back and forth and calling and things. They're letting people know, or they're letting other animals like them know where they are and that they're the same, right? Like, like I'm over here, right? Like if you come talk to me, like I talk your same language and I'm like, buddy, I think in the liberty world, we need more of that, right? Like Dave Smith's going to continue to do his thing. The other creators are going to continue to do their thing. Most of the people in the Libertarian Party are going to continue to try and like move campaigns forward and initiatives if they're, being active and trying to fight back against things like the vaccine passport. But what really takes it from like a small smoldering ember to a gigantic bonfire type flame is if we begin building community. Tom Woods even started to say something like this, I think a couple days ago, and he put out I forget if it was a tweet or a letter, and he said the part that I think a lot of people are afraid to say, and it's that look, there's this civilization that we live in, right? Like there are these towns and these cities and these counties and these states and this country that we live in, and we're operating under the premise that we want to live amongst everyone in the community and just be able to make it work, right? But maybe it's possible that we just have to build our own parallel community, right? Not segregate ourselves and not like, move out into the middle of nowhere and create, Libertopia and some kind of commune somewhere that's hundreds of miles away from everything. But literally build these parallel communities. It's something that the crew here in New Jersey really, it's what inspired us to start trying to move towards this idea of the deep dive, this social club that's going to be a nexus. It's going to be the brain stem for what happens here in New Jersey with the liberty movement. And it's one part activism, but at the heart of it is community. It's bringing people together that want to be free. It's a place where when the world comes crashing down around you because it's all centralized and it's all authoritarian and it's all corrupt as shit, you can go there. It's the Alamo, right? It's the place where you can call home base. When you're up against it and you're fighting the fight, it's home base. And that's something that we need to begin building and replicating throughout the entire, not even just the country, the world, right? Like when I'm lucky enough, I get some of the folks from like Uganda that are parting this like libertarian, association that's out there in Uganda, watching and interacting with my content. Those people are building a community. They're building home base, right? We need to do the same thing. But you can't do that unless you raise your hand and be like, yeah, like I'm for liberty, right? You can't just walk around and then, placate people. There's a ton of people right now that are walking around asking others, like, oh, so when are you getting your shot? When are you getting the vaccine? Like, when are you getting it? Are you getting the second one? Like, are you priority? Are you authorized? Like, when are you getting it? How did you feel? There's a lot of people in the liberty movement that I know of, myself included, that will placate those people. They'll and it's an innocent question on their part, right? It's a very innocent question. But many of them think that it's just a foregone conclusion. Just everyone should get the shot, right? And it's not a foregone conclusion. It's an option. You have an option. Everything in life should be voluntary. In fact, it is until the government makes it not voluntary. But, when that question gets asked, it can be very uncomfortable to give the answer that you want to give. Or if someone says, well, how do you feel about this vaccine passport? I'm actually for it because, I'm going to get my freedom back and, I want to go to the ball game or whatever. It's really easy just to be like, I guess, I don't know, whatever, right? It's really easy to be like that. But you know what? There's some people out there that they feel the way you do. They either know it or it's like inside and they just haven't been able to kind of like, put the words to it, right? Like they've kind of felt it, but they don't know what it is yet, right? And it can help having someone say the words and then being like, wow, you just spoke the thing that I've been feeling and I didn't know what I was feeling for a while. But the need is there for the words to be spoken. You have to raise your hand, right? You have to give out that call to be like, I'm here. In New Jersey, I would have to say like the nexus of that is Mike Rufo, who was on last night. We have a crew in Jersey that is growing, and it is like you can feel the energy amongst us, and you can feel the energy because it's beginning to attract people, right? Like we don't just have to like go out and recruit one at a time. There are people that are beginning to like gravitate toward us because we say it out loud. Like we're not afraid to say it. And yeah, there's potential repercussions. You could have family and friends and things like that think differently of you after you mouth those words. But, on Liberty Twitter, there's a lot of people that have no problem running their mouth, myself included, all right? But the question is, does that actually play out in real life, right? Twitter is not real life. Twitter's Twitter. It's an alternate universe, okay? Does it play out in real life, right? Like, are you able, and again, you don't have to get into a fight. Like, I'm not saying go out and pick a fight with people. I'm saying have the conversation. Stick to your principles, right? One of the things all of us, at least in the New Jersey crew and a lot of us within the Liberty movement keep coming back to is that video of Ron Paul on Morton Downey Jr.'s show. like shouting down a crowd, like a mob of angry people that were yelling at him. And the sick thing is the hypocrisy that's on display in that very show, right? Like, they're talking about drug legalization and they're talking about illegal foreign interventionist wars. And he's pushing back against them just as vehemently as they're coming at him, because they have the crowd, right? Like, they have the numbers. That's what gives them the courage. All right? What gave him the courage was the principles. It was the liberty. That's what gave him the courage, right? Like, that's how he knew he could shout down a crowd of 100 angry people. And I talk about the hypocrisy because, you know, Morton Downey Jr. sitting there, he's smoking away on a cigarette talking about drug legalization. And then, you know, like, they go to commercial and he runs in the back and he does a line of coke. Like, that was Downey Jr. I mean, like, that's the family, right? But the liberty gave, and the principles gave Ron Paul that strength to come forward and say those things. But I'm not even saying that you have to shout down a crowd of 100 people. Just talk to one person, right? Just have the conversation. Some people are so polar, you're not going to reach them, right? The key is identifying that really early on. If they're so ultra polar, like, you can, you know, broach the topics, all right? Just to like fly a balloon out there. And then when they come back at you and just and bite your head off, like, all right, whatever. This one's too far gone, right? Like, I can't talk to this person. But there's some other people out there that you're going to have daily conversations with who legitimately don't seem to have an opinion one way or another. Or rather, they're just not displaying it. And a lot of those people probably feel or see things the way that you see them. They see the lack or the loss of freedom and liberty. They've experienced it and are continuing to experience it. Those are the people that are going to be open and receptive. And you're not doing it to convert them. Like, I'm not saying to go out and, like, evangelize to them. What I'm saying is go out and just have an honest conversation with principles and logic. Because that is it's a very rare commodity nowadays. It's very precious to come across people that are principled and dedicated to liberty. And I can tell you that I would probably still be out there wafting around trying to find my place if it wasn't for the group of people that I was able to come across. And of all places, on Twitter, right? Like, a little bit on Facebook, but mostly Twitter was where it happened. And it was just, you know, a couple of people were vocal enough to catch my attention. We started having a conversation. All of a sudden, it's a group chat, and then it's like a book club, and then it's a podcast, and then it's a, you know, that snowball effect gets going. And I've said this in the past, and I believe this to my core. The two parties that are out there, the two sides of the aisle, these behemoths that are fighting back and forth, they have unlimited resources. Like, literally unlimited. If they were up against it and all of a sudden the Libertarian Party was like a thing tomorrow, they would be able to call up and raise $1 billion. Like that. Right? Like nothing. $1 billion in an instant, a heartbeat. But the one thing that Ron Paul proved to a lot of people is that the message of liberty doesn't need $1 billion. It needs some resources, right? Like, it needs some people, it needs some time, it needs some energy, it needs some money, all right? But you can be David and fight Goliath as long as you have liberty as your slingshot. And take this as someone who's coming up with an allegory. I am not inherently religious much anymore, okay? But the story is very true, right? Like, you don't need a bigger sword to take down a giant. You need a better tool. You need a better weapon, right? And liberty is that, it's that thing, because it is not contorted, right? It's attempted to be contorted, but it's not contorted. It's something where it's not like a political party platform that you have to like, do gymnastics mentally in order to make sense of it. It just makes sense, right? Like the platform builds itself around the principles. I can't even begin to tell you what the principles are of Republicans and Democrats. But what I can tell you is that they build community. The Democrats are better at building like culture, right? Like mass appeal, easily digestible culture. The Republicans are good at building community, especially religious conservatives. They build churches. They build these kind of like tribes. Like they build tribes where they're at, and they do a really good job of that. Libertarians aren't good at that. And anyone who's in the liberty movement, regardless of how you identify, we need to get better at that. And Tom Wood's point is extremely well taken. We have to find places where liberty can thrive, right? There are certain places where plants just don't grow. We have to find the places where the liberty plant will grow, right? And then it's on us. You got to plant it and tend it and water it and weed and everything like that, right? But we have to build community. And I think it's becoming painfully obvious that we can't build community in a conventional way within the centralized authoritarian community or world that we live in right now. We have to carve out our own space, right? And you know what? We'll let people in, but we can't just be like, oh, okay, well, we're going to latch on to you here, or we're going to latch on to this here. We'll just tack a little bit of liberty onto this existing community here. It's not going to work because, again, the principles are succinct and they're pure, right? And as soon as you tack on to another community that doesn't exactly share those principles, it's really difficult. It gets murky really quickly, okay? And I'm not saying like don't talk to those people. What I'm saying is we have to be vocal to the point where we're identifying each other and we're finding each other and we're coming together as a community, right? We have to be able to build that home base for us to like launch from. We have to build that center where, once we have that, then we build the next and the next and the next. And it doesn't have to be centralized either in terms of the control, right? Like, if anything, my journey over the last 12 months has taught me that decentralized, order is better than centralized. It's centralized, order and authority and planning is convenient. It's easier from the sense of, it's the quickest route to making order. Decentralized order is messy, and it's difficult, but it's more resilient. It lasts longer. Eventually, it ends up being more productive than the centrally planned order. So it's not like you have to create some nexus and then, create some kind of like colonization plan. But what I'm saying is create home base, whatever that looks like. For us in New Jersey, it's going to be a social club. It's going to be a centralized location. It's going to be a core of people that are going to dedicate themselves to getting the message of liberty out there, right? Whether it be through political activism, running for campaign, for political office, whether it be helping out in the nonprofit world and raising funds and showing that libertarians truly believe in building community. That's the other aspect of this, is a lot of folks that don't understand what we're about because they just haven't heard it. They will try and say, oh, well, libertarians are just selfish, right? Like, y'all just want your money and you don't want us to tax you and you don't want to give to the poor. You just want to like be wealthy and rich and leave everyone else to their own devices. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But when you build these communities of liberty-minded people, part of that community building process is it's giving back. It's and again, not building a wall around your community, but integrating it into the broader community that's out there and showing people that the liberty community is there not to be selfish and just give me it, it's mine, and don't take anything that's mine, but actually giving back. right? Giving back to the people that are around. And I can tell you a million times over, like, there are so many people out there that embody this, and it's just a bad marketing plan, is what it is. It's bad messaging, right? In New Jersey alone, we have multiple nonprofits that are represented by our small group of people, right? Like, out of 7, 8 people, we have multiple nonprofits that are either originated or supported by us, okay? But that's not what people want to focus on, and we do a piss poor job of telling people that that's what we're doing. But if we showed them that this is what we do, this is how we live, that's going to be the way. Coming back to that euphemism about or that story about Harvey Milk, like, you have to let people know that you're there. I think part of the message, or part of the misconception of what happened with the Libertarian Party of Kentucky tweet, was all about, like, well, what if we alienate people, and what if we gain 1 follower and lose 10 and things like that? Well, here's the thing. Probably, like, those 10 people that we lost didn't even know we existed in the first place. That's the state of things. Or if they knew that we existed, they don't know who we are. Right? And so that's the key, is you have to identify yourself. You have to put it out there, and you have to own it. And then you also, that in turn doesn't just help you. It helps the other people that are around you that might have been afraid to come forward. They might have been afraid to voice what they stood for. Or maybe they just didn't even know yet, right? But somewhere in there was some level of fear, because they were afraid that they were going to get canceled, or they were afraid that they were going to get, excommunicated from the group of people that didn't see things that way. And libertarians have that, like, we have such strong, like, mutual, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, we've had to go through some shit, right? Like, from both ends. Like, we get it from both sides. There's community there. You can commiserate on that, right? And you see that a lot online. But, one of the things that you can also build that around is just the fact that you have this cohesive, principled approach and thought process, okay? And you want to build a nexus of people that are going to show others, like, this is what we're truly about. The propaganda, the, labels of us being, domestic terrorists or hate organization or something like that. All of that, I mean, you can't out-propaganda them. What you can do in your local community is show people, like, this is what we believe. This is how we act. This is how we live our life. And if you wanted to embrace liberty, this is how you can live too. So, I don't want to go too much longer than that. It's a short episode. It's Friday night. I actually think Josh Smith is probably live right about now. So once you're done here and you hit the like button and you subscribe, you should go over and watch Break the Cycle with Josh Smith. And I forget who he has on tonight, but I think it's a pretty good guest. But so, yeah, you could definitely go over there and catch Josh Smith. Toplobster.com. All right, toplobster.com. If you like some Liberty merch and stuff like that. Look, I want to say thank you to all of you, and a huge shout out to the crew here in New Jersey. Look, I'd still be lost and floating without you guys. This is something that has reinvigorated me in a time of just complete darkness, that has given me something that it's not just something to latch onto. It's not just a lifeboat. It's a freaking Liberty speedboat is what it is. And I'm loving every second of the trip, of the drive that we're on. So there's going to be more big stuff coming out in New Jersey. Just watch. But if anyone is interested, if you are in the New Jersey area, hit us up on Twitter or online. I'm also going to throw on the scroll here. I did update my Linktree. So if you go to Linktree, my Hive accounts are on there now. I am beginning to post there. I think as part of my weekly shtick, maybe Friday nights will be my 3Speak live cast night. So if you want to watch me on Fridays, you're going to have to tune in on 3Speak. There is a episode on the YouTube channel that is a 1 hour like newbie, like how to get started on the Hive blockchain episode. Okay, it will be an hour that believe me when I say this, it will free you. The people that I've met on the Hive blockchain, the diversity of thought and individuals that are on there, it is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I've had more productive conversations on there, only having a handful of people that I follow and a handful of people following me than I've had in probably weeks on platforms like Facebook. Twitter, I have, a bunch of people that I've connected with over a long period of time, so I can't necessarily say it's reached that level just yet, but we are building a Liberty community on the Hive blockchain. And on top of that, Diego says, awesome stuff, very hard to do a show by yourself. That's true. That is true, Diego. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of like yelling out into the void, And my brother tuned in and saying, you're not alone, brother. Love your passion. Thank you very much from the beautiful state of Georgia. I do not know why YouTube doesn't give any notifications. I'm sorry about that. But if you do hit the notification bell, it's supposed to. But if you follow me on Twitter, I typically throw out a tweet as well, probably about like 15, 20, 30 minutes right before I go live every single night. So there's also that. So, but, and here's another selling point of Hive. Hive isn't just like a social media platform, okay? You actually get to essentially make money off of your activity on that social media platform. It helps build the platform. It helps grow the value of the crypto, which is called Hive, that backs it. And if I just throw this up, this is Hive crypto, man. It's like, it spiked earlier in the year up to almost $1. And it's been running up here as of late. It's been a really good store of value throughout this whole thing. And it's because that it is based off of the activity that happens on the blockchain. And that activity is increasing every single day as more apps and more use cases come into play. There are some like commerce-based apps that are on the platform. There are going to become a lot more as this gets more popular. So the other thing that I am gifting to you in this episode is get in now. Like, these folks are dedicated. They left a successful blockchain, split from a successful blockchain, because that successful blockchain was attempted to be hijacked so that it wouldn't be decentralized anymore. These people are the true believers in decentralization, and they will protect that with everything. And I'm telling you, the people that you meet on this platform are absolutely fantastic, and they have a vested interest. And once you become a part of the community, again, this is one of those communities. We're building a Liberty community on blockchain. So if you can't make it to New Jersey to the deep dive and let me buy you a beer eventually once we get it opened, definitely hit us up on the Hive blockchain. Check us out and come check in and see some of the content that we're putting up there. So that's it. 40 minutes. I was a little longer than I thought, but that's it. I will be back Monday. I forget who I got coming up Monday, but we got a full week. Check out on Twitter, on Facebook. I will be putting out the schedule for next week. We have a full week of episodes planned. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a fantastic weekend. Good night.